Many of you ask me what is happening now in Romania. We are in an ongoing coup d'etat. Mr. Georgescu put his candidacy at the Central Bureau, Electoral Bureau, and by 10 persons to 4, by 10 members to 4, it was rejected without any reason. All the papers were in good order. They just said they voted through their conscience. Now there are 5 judges there. All of them voted against him, and 5 representatives of the parties that are actually in power. The 4 votes for Mr. Georgescu were from our side of the opposition. We live in a dictatorship. Please help us. Please be on our side to restore democracy in Romania.
So, is it official now? Romania is by definition now not a true democracy. A very short recap first. An independent Romanian presidential candidate, Călin Georgescu, was able to win first-round election in Romania last year in 2024. But the election was cancelled, claiming that there's Russian-Chinese interference through TikTok, I think, which is why Georgescu win. Fast forwarding to February this year, Călin Georgescu tried to run for president again, but I believe he was arrested by police. Later, he was released and was put on some kind of judicial measures, including a 2-month ban on media appearance, which includes social media. And now, just this week, he was barred from participating in presidential election rerun entirely, okay? And as of yesterday, his appeal to the decision was rejected for not really any good reasons. Well, I went through the trouble to find out if Romanian president has any true power. Because in some other countries, presidential power is often symbolic. And yes, Romania president has true power, a lot of true power actually. The power of the Romanian president includes, but not limiting to the following, okay? Represents Romania in international affairs, appoints ambassadors and negotiate international treaties, commander-in-chief, can declare state of emergency, nominate prime minister, okay, and can refuse appointment as well, and many other powers. Quite a lot of power, actually. I wonder, does this have to do with the biggest NATO base located in Romania? Romania is not allowed to have, let's say, another Robert Fiscal, maybe? That's the reason. And we're not talking about a country that is far away from Europe, in Africa or Central America or Asia. Yes, just yesterday, the Philippines ex-president was arrested, in which he is also the father of the current vice president of Philippines, okay? I mean, seriously, I always try to tell myself that people must be able to see the grand pattern now. Democracy, in most cases, are more or less just an illusion. And what happened in Romania is within European Union itself. And can my friends in Europe tell me if your country's leaders are speaking out about this? If they are not speaking out, what does it say about your own country's democracy? Now, there's almost no Chinese social media geopolitical analysts who talk about this, all right? The majority of them do not have this kind of vibrant international background. And the ones that do has an ultra focus on other major powers such as the United States, Russia, France, and so on. Or their focus are usually on neighboring countries such as, Philippines and Korea and Vietnam, so on. So there's rarely any mention of Eastern European politics in China. However, I do want to bring up a short video from Professor Jean again to help make my point. It's a really short video, okay? Let's take a look. From the point of view of the ruling establishment in the United States, Trump's new policy and actions are borderline fanatic and crazy in his first month. I think Americans' European allies also see Trump's action as unexpected and crazy. There are many angles to look at this. One is that he is taking revenge on domestic political opponents, the ruling establishment, or what he often referred to as the deep state. Trump believes, and also many Chinese experts also believe, that the United States are actually controlled by this so-called deep state. And this deep state is mainly to be blamed for the United States' decline. This deep state ruling establishment make a mess in Trump's first president term. He even claimed that he lost the 2020 election due to deep state's political muddling, or else he would have won the election. And between 2020 to 2024, during Biden's administration, Trump and his family was prosecuted, and Trump almost got thrown in jail. I think the hatred between Trump and the deep states has taken a deep root. Okay, let's pause here for a second. For people who disagree with this and say that Trump is just part of the deep state, I think let's agree on Trump represent maybe a different fashion of the ruling establishment deep state, and it's agreed on by many and very obvious right now that there are internal political conflict within the United States. Okay, let's continue. Trump and Musk know that the deep state is very powerful, and if Trump is unable to take down the strength of the deep state during his presidency, his life and his family legacy might be in danger. So from my perspective, Trump is using Elon Musk's DOGE, using the excuse of improving government efficiency to punish and dismantle the deep state power structure. So why is Trump seem to be punishing Europeans as well? This is because most of the political figureheads and leaders from Trump's point of view in Europe is the extension, the sub-branches of the same establishment deep state that has been prosecuting him. So for Trump, even if he significantly crippled the deep state in the United States, but if the deep state power managed to survive in Europe, it might still threaten him after he retired from office. So in some way, now Trump is using Russia to punish these European deep state puppets into submission. And use this opportunity to promote right-wing nationalists in Europe who share his value in politics. This is why this theatric speech Vance gave took place in Munich. J.D. Vance scolded European leaders in Germany, didn't meet with Olaf Scholz, and went to meet with AfD leader Alex Wader instead. So what do you guys think? Remember many months ago, I made this tier list video in which I talk about which countries are sovereign and which ones to me that are just puppet vassal like. I didn't talk about Romania, but if I am to make a tier list video again today, Poland, Romania, Estonia, Latvia, all these countries will be in D tier, like D minus, if not straight F, okay? There's not much of a sovereignty left in these countries, in my opinion. Here, Professor Jin, for the first time I remember watching his video, openly says that most of European countries are controlled by deep state, which to me more or less is true. And it's not just me, okay? For people who doubt it, if you look at, for example, Xi Jinping's most recent trip to Europe after the Ukraine war, he only went to France and Hungary and Serbia. The other country, he didn't even bother to go or meet anybody there. Because I think from his point of view, even for France, I know many of you guys disagree according to how Chinese look at France. We see France as a little bit more sovereign than the others, but I know Europeans see it differently. But nevertheless, there's no point in engaging in any kind of high-level political interaction with majority of the states in Europe. We can just talk business. If you want to do a trade deal, sign some contract for some port or products, that's fine. But when it comes to many high level, geopolitical matters, we Chinese know that majority of these European states has no say. The power just not there in their country, is somewhere else. Okay, I want to speak my mind here, all right? My own political philosophy, and this might slightly upset a lot of audience in my channel because I have very long email exchanges with several of my audience regarding European sovereignty, and a lot of the very well-educated individuals were able to pinpoint exactly when their country in Europe lost their sovereignty and became part of this, left-wing globalist family. Well, to me, whether a country like Romania is a real democracy or a vassal, close satellite of another country hiding behind some kind of fake democracy, to me, it doesn't really matter that much. And for me to begin with, I don't really believe in democracy, to be honest, at this point, really. At this point, if somebody say that I believe in democracy, to me it's like saying, oh, you believe in a religion, that's what you believe. It's like Christianity. I don't believe in Christianity or Islam or democracy, but if you believe it, I respect it. But to me, it's just it doesn't really mean anything. It's basically a fiction, okay? Because often these political parties, these power courts, what I call it, they often operate like mafias, right? No matter which countries you are in. So it doesn't really matter if your country is run by a local mafia or some kind of foreign mafia. What matters to me is that through observation of how a country is run, how policy is implemented, can that country really maintain peace and prosperity consistently? All right. Is the leader of that country, foreign or domestic, able to take care of the population? And I would say that's not entirely impossible if you are a vassal of another country. Japan is a good example. Yes, Plaza Accord did Japan dirty, but overall, if you've been to Japan and if you live in Japan, its society is very peaceful and is in good harmony. Now, here's the important point I want to make in this video, especially to my European friends, all right? But also to everyone else around the world, because you have to understand that by definition, a vassalized country is literally like slavery at a state level, okay? If you can look at vassal state from three core categories. First, does this country have independent foreign policy? Does your country have the right to stay neutral or change alignment, especially during geopolitical turbulence era? And this, I would say, among the three core categories, to me, is the least important. Okay, most developed countries today, Western country, is no longer foreign policy independent from my point of view. Second, how much economic independence a state has. All right, I suggest my European friends to really go and take a look at how the United States run its banana republics in Central America. Maybe France is doing something similar in Africa, but I'm not really educated in those details. This is a much bigger problem, I would say, because if large-scale economic control and manipulation happen by another foreign country to your country in Europe, for example, it will severely hamper the standard of living of a country's population, which I feel like Europe is really heading towards that direction. Okay. In comparison, it is like the Warsaw states during Soviet era. Those so-called countries are not allowed to fully engage with other countries without, Soviet Russia's permission. they do not have this kind of independent foreign policy, right? The economic manipulation can be done directly. So when, let's say, a foreign entity or business runs your country or political system, it can tax the population and spend it in a way that spend the tax money in a way that benefits another country over the country itself. Or it can done indirectly through currency manipulation. So you have, for example, EU central bank printing, billions and trillions of euros and hand it over to American arms dealer or energy supplier and so on. That's also extracting wealth from your wallet. That cost is eventually passed down to the general population itself. The end game of this kind of scenario will be something like the movie, what's the name of the movie? Hunger Game. Yes. Remember the movie Hunger Game, in which you have the world kind of layer out in different zones. There's upper zone and there's lower zone. And the people in the upper zone get, easier, better jobs, better salary, better pay, and have higher standard of living. And the lower zone are stuck in, poverty, doing dirty works. So what I'm trying to say here is that I've always emphasized that the reality of the global world is actually a pyramid, this kind of colonial system. And the bottom part, this global south part, is right now shaky. And many of these countries are maybe choosing to align differently and using also currency swap to do trades, and this is really weakening the US position. And what I'm really afraid is that when this bottom part, if you use the movie Hunger Game as a reference, you have 12 zones, and the bottom zone 5 to zone 12 is going away, and now US have to replace your country in Europe or in Eastern Europe especially to fill up the bottom zone. So because US does no longer have the power to manipulate and control the majority of the global south, now you have to kind of go down to the bottom sector of those zooms and do those dirty work. And this is really feel like the direction where Europe is going. And I would say that that's not even the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is that this foreign entity, the slave master, okay, use you as a proxy war to weakening another geopolitical rival, send you off to die. You're dying for another country's hegemony. That is the worst case. And I think, according to my own studies, Europe after World War II still had many great independent leaders who did a great job serving their countries. But over the decades, and especially after the formation of EU and the collapse of the Soviet Union, countries in Europe started to really lose their sovereignty when it comes to foreign policy. But of course, not just foreign policy. And then with the establishment of Euro, some of the countries lost their monetary sovereignty. And to make matter worse, these US social media tech giants monopolize the information space. So the majority of the information sovereignty is also gone. As I said, what I'm truly worried about in Europe is that it is also now getting this second and third items on the list. Its economic sovereignty is getting stripped away. You don't get to choose who you can or cannot trade with, okay? Whether you can use Huawei 5G network or not. Can you drive, let's say, a Chinese EV? Can you buy Russian energy, or can you watch TikTok or Red Note? You will be limited, the option, and it's limited on purpose. And European citizens will not get to decide how to spend their fiscal budget. A foreign country will decide that for you. All right, to sell you fear, so you can give up your social benefits, pays, and high standard of living for weaponaries and expensive energies, for example. And of course, the worst case scenario is like Ukraine. Oh my God, Ukraine, the negotiation right now is going nowhere if you guys see the news today. And Trump is suggesting some kind of 30-day ceasefire. Will that work? I don't think so. So for this case in Romania, maybe you guys will think that, Romania is not any big power, it's not a big concern. It is a good way for especially Europeans to fact check your own government, because Europe has always proclaimed itself to be the heaven of democracy, right? There are well over 10,000 comments in my channels by now, and I read all of them. I don't remember how many people from Europe going into the comment section, yelling about democracy and how Russia is assaulting Ukrainian sovereignty and democracy and is damaging sovereignty. If you are in a EU country and your president or prime minister is not openly concerned, okay? Let me use the word, I'm only saying concerned because they don't have to support Georgescu here. They only need to say something like, we are a bit concerned and worried about what's going on in Romania. I wonder why they cancel election and ban legitimate candidate from running for office. I hope democratic values can be upheld in that country. That's all they need to say. But are they saying that? You tell me. Maybe the mainstream media in the English media space is not saying that. Maybe, I just, there are a million countries in Europe and 1 trillion language, okay? You guys can tell me in your language space, in your country, does your prime minister or president come on and say something openly to condemn Romania's practice of democracy? Is it happening or not? You tell me. So it's fair to, let's say, I'm not saying for sure, but if your country's leader in Europe is not coming out and say something directly, it means that your democracy is probably not real either, okay? It's being heavily manipulated. They are likely to be some kind of puppet deep state George Soros managerial candidate. That's what you have if they are not speaking up. You see my logic here? Oh, is Kaya Kallas speaking out from Estonia? Is Alexander Stubb from Finland speaking out? Donald Tusk, Poland, is he saying anything? Olaf Scholz, Merz, are they speaking out? If they are not, that alarm bell should be ringing in your head, okay? And this go even further, all right? If Europeans don't even stand up and uphold this so-called democratic value within your own political economic union, you lose all the right, okay, to accuse any other countries around the world regarding democratic value, period. Let me tell you guys a story, okay? And this is a real story. I went to a private high school in Bay Area here in California, in Mountain View. It's a Christian high school. And I remember I had a Bible class teacher named Mr. Guerrero from, I forgot where he was from, Costa Rica or Puerto Rico, I think. And besides preaching the word of God, he was also a vegetarian, okay? He said eating meat is bad. I remember his famous word is that all the red meat has potential tube worms in it or something, and if you have to kill the tube worm larva, you have to burn the meat, which is not edible after. So he want every one of his students to eventually convert to Christianity and also become a vegetarian. And one day, okay, a student went to Burger King to get some food, and the guy who stood in front of him ordered a cheeseburger without cheese, please. And guess who that is? Our vegetarian Bible teacher, okay? And that was like the joke for all the students and faculty members for the rest of the month. And from that point on, his narrative is that it is evil to eat meat with cheese, but eating meat alone is okay, all right? Remember I told you guys I spent, over 3,000 hours talking to European friends after this Ukraine war before I started this channel. And in every email exchange, it's always filled with words like sovereignty and freedom and democracy and all that. I take a closer look at some of these countries' political system, mainly in Eastern Europe, and I ask them, are you sure? I, are you sure your leader is not just a foreign installed puppet, some kind of governor, administrator? Because after a year of running this channel, okay, this might be offensive, because more a person use the word democracy to explain his point of view of the world, it is almost for certain, without exception, that the person do not understand how the world truly works. Really, that's my point of view. So today, from this point onward, if your country, your own country in Europe, if your government and leader is not standing up and speaking out on this issue in Romania, then you also lose the right to point fingers at anybody else on this planet about democratic values, because you're not living in a real democracy either. So don't come to me and say, Russia has a fake democracy, China don't have a democracy, and all that. I have openly said I just do not believe in democracy, and China is not a democracy according to Western standard. Okay, there's no mass election and all that. I don't have a problem with your country's political system. If you insist you're living in a real democracy, that's fine with me. It's just like telling me you believe in Christianity. It's just a religion by now, okay? I don't believe it is the kind of democracy you claim it to be most of the time, but if you're fine with it, I'm fine with it, okay? Me, this is the point. Democracy basically has become some kind of a ritual. It's just a ritual. So you believe in democracy is like my classmate and I believe that our Bible class teacher is a vegetarian, all right? You don't know if you have a real democracy until you want to push forward some major change. And, oh, my candidate has been banned from election. You haven't experienced that vegetarian teacher in Burger King yet. That's what I will tell you. And also, I was educated here in California, the headquarters of Democrats and liberal democracy, okay? I'm living right now in Los Angeles, and this so-called democratic value US used to brainwash Europeans and the rest of the world come from my place, all right? And I'm not going to lie, I used to believe in this kind of shit as well. I want to end this video with another personal story, okay? Last week, this guy left me a message in the comment section and introduced me to a person named Daniel Bessner of American Prestige. That's a podcast. And just so happened, I know this guy, all right? Let me show you here. You see that young lady walking in front of me? That's my sister, Helen. She's a US-born citizen and went to school in University of Washington in Seattle. And just so happened, my sister Helen took Professor Bessner's political science class in that university. And during Christmas last year, my sister and I were visiting our parents in Wuhan. And we were in a room playing some mini games and talking about politics. And she introduced me to his favorite professor here, right? And I was like, okay, let's see if I can find some video of his to watch on YouTube. And you guys can find actually a lot of video of him on YouTube. And I'm just going to show you guys a very short clip from him, okay?
So I guess my general proposition is that I think the United States should essentially draw down its empire. What do I mean by its empire? Presently, as probably everyone listening is vaguely aware, at least the United States spends an enormous amount on its military, between $750 and $800 trillion. We have 750 overseas military bases. Essentially, the global reserve currency is the American dollar. And I think that if one looks at the history of the actually existing American empire, which I would date to roughly World War II, of course, the United States has always been an expansionist power, starting with East Coast settlement, moving west, going further during the War of 1898 to take literal colonies in the Philippines and Puerto Rico. And in fact, today, some people might not know the United States actually has control of 5 populated colonies: Puerto Rico, Rico, Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I'm blanking on the last one, American Samoa. So we are a colonial power in that sense, but even more than that, we have this sort of global presence. And I would say when you look at the history of what the United States has done abroad as a whole, we've actually done more damage to the world than good. I think what the U.S. did in Europe, in Western Europe, was a general good. It basically ended war in Western and Central Europe for much of the post-1945 period. But when you look at the global South, I think what you see is a series of attempted coups, some of which succeeded, most of which, whether they succeeded or not, caused enormous damage. You could point to the overthrow of Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran, the overthrow of Jacobo Arbenz, Allende, participation in the Indonesian genocide in the 1960s. So the U.S. has really done enormous damage, in addition to what people listening might be more familiar with, like the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, the intervention in Libya. So I would say, I think as an American citizen, someone who has a voice in this country, it's my duty to essentially try to restrain U.S. foreign policy, because on balance, as I said, I think it's done more damage to the world. There are larger claims I could make that are essentially philosophical about the ability of an outside power to really know what's going on in another country, which is based on intelligence, which is based on particular types of access. But I'll let it stand there that on the whole, the U.S. has done more harm than good in the world.
And in this video, he talked about American colonialism that exists to this very day, and also expansionism strategy and all that. You guys can go watch. Now, listen to this carefully, okay? See if you guys can understand. I remembered my sister told me during one of the Middle East politics section that he took in university, that the United States, after the Iraq War, intentionally backed a minority faction in Iraq, tribal leader, into power. This will automatically create an imbalance within the country itself, because the ruling party, the ruling leader, is not representing the majority. However, this is required for U.S. establishment, and in this case, colonial power, to maintain political control over the state, its colonies, all right? Because only by backing a minority, sometimes extreme groups, these foreign colonial power can maintain power. The logic behind this is that if the majority is the one that's being backed, they will be already independent, and they often might not be willing to go along with their foreign imperial colonial economic objectives that's ordered by another state. The minority group, however, cannot afford to betray the colonial master, because their own people are already against them to begin with. And once they disobey their master, the US can easily turn on them by some kind of color revolution. You see, that's called leverage. And when a colonial power has control of your country, they will work together with your puppet leader to suppress domestic national forces. This is textbook colonial strategy that's played out currently in Europe. How is it possible that so many Europeans still cannot see this? Is beyond me. I often blame IQ, but yeah, it's probably more complicated than that. The 2 points I want to make here is that, first, every history or political science professor here in United States with any ounce of decencies, no one accept that US is an empire with literal colonies in the Caribbean, and also many satellite and shadow colonies around the world. This narrative is taught even by my history teacher in high school and college. They just might have a more pro-US opinion, saying that US empire is good force for the world. It helped to avoid bad dictators and so on. And many of my real-life friends in Europe, including my ex-employer, call me Kremlin agent. Kremlin propagandists for saying US is an empire. So all these US professor and teachers I had, these ones on YouTube also, my sister's professor, are they all Russian FSB agents then? Is that what you are saying? Because in this 1 year running this geopolitical China, I don't remember anyone in the global south speak of democracy as naive and as delusional as usually friends from the West. Of course, this is not all of you, but I will say today it is still majority in the West. Audience in my channel I consider to be minorities. And the second point, this Professor Daniel, I watched him on several podcasts, and the way he described the United States today and more or less collective West, it is truly depressing, okay, the way he say it. I mean, he even looked depressing on screen if you watch his video on YouTube. He always looked like he just had a hangover or something. He also wrote a book. The name of the book is, and I'm not kidding, Democracy in Exile. All right. Let me give you just a short, condensed summary of the book. This book is a detailed intellectual biography of Hans Spencer, a German sociologist who fled Nazi Germany and became a key figure in shaping US strategy thoughts during the Cold War. And part of the key message of this book, okay, Daniel used Spencer's career as a case study to explore the border transformation of intellectuals in the 20th century, particularly how scholars moved from academia into government advisory roles. The book argues that this shift led to the rise of technocrats, elites, that influence foreign policy in ways that sometimes conflicted with democratic ideas and values. Okay, Spencer and his contemporaries, while committed to democracy in principle, often advocate for policies that prioritize in security and stability over democratic participation, raising ethnic questions about the role of unelected intellectuals in shaping global affairs. That sounds awfully accurate, doesn't it? When you talk about, politics both in US and in Europe. To this professor, this American Professor Daniel, the United States democracy is beyond saving. Okay, he believes that there's no way to reverse the democratic and social decline. He's extremely pessimistic about the future of the United States. Well, I'm not a professor, he is, okay? But I think the priority right now for us human race, okay, is that the Chinese, Europeans, Americans, Russians, we should all try our best to avoid great power war, because that might lead to nuclear escalation. That must take top priority at this stage, all right? As long as there's no nuclear winter, and if a nuclear winter can be avoided, it is just a matter of time until things will self-adjust. It might take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or even 50 years. And many people watching this video might not witness a full recovery of Europe or United States within your lifetime, because many of you are quite old already. But things will get better, but it will get worse before it gets better. That's my view, okay? Let me know what you guys think. See you guys in the next video.
Gentlemen, it has been a pleasure and an honor to meet you and your people. The U.S. government supports you in every possible way, ideologically, of course. However, we cannot offer any military aid at this time.
With all due respect, Ambassador, we need more than that.
We are dealing with terrorism on a daily basis.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Warlords overrun villages.
Yes, that's regrettable.
Rapes, tortures, all manner of human atrocities.
That's really sad. But the U.S. military is simply spread too thin. We can't afford another intervention at this time.
But what we could use your help with really is protecting our vulnerable, plentiful, and newly discovered oil reserves.
Oil? Excuse me 1 second. Operation Golden Eagle is a go. Welcome to democracy.
We also have natural gases.
Oh, yes, a lot of it.